Hi guys, in this video we're looking at a mock test from Ashfield Driving Test Centre, and as we start up we're going to kick off with the driver fault for the vehicle checks. When you start your driving test you'll be asked a tell me question. Now it's not essential that you get this correct of course, but these tell me questions are going to set you up to look after your own vehicle better, and if you get the question wrong it will just be recorded as a driver fault. However, it can put you into a negative start, a negative mindset, and of course that can then cause a problem later on. So well worth practicing those questions, making sure you get the correct answer to give you a confident start to the test. As we come up to the end of the driveway for the test centre here, what we want to be doing is getting the car nice and straight all the way to the giveaway line before we cross over and make our turn. You can see my pupil is really nicely there, bringing the car nice and straight to the end before we pull out to the left. As we pull out, we've got a traffic light junction straight away, and again we want to get into position. Whether we're going left, right or straight, we need to make sure we're lined up for that as soon as we pull out. So keep your eyes into the road you're going into. My pupil again is lined up really nicely for this because we're taking a left turn. While you're sat at the traffic lights, do keep your mind active, keep looking around, scanning those mirrors, scanning for vehicles that might sneak up behind you, such as push bikes and motorbikes who might filter through the traffic. And of course anyone who might want to change direction. Sometimes you get people who they'll queue up on the right hand lane and then decide they want to go left. So just keep your eyes moving for things like that, and of course keep switched on for the traffic lights, because when they change you want to be seen making good progress away from them lights and keeping up with the moving traffic ahead of you. Give the car in front a little bit of time to pull away of course, and then follow on nice and safely, just maintaining a nice following distance. My pupil again does a really nice job doing that, and as she makes the turn she's tucking herself into that left hand side, which is absolutely spot on. Notice the arrows up ahead telling the right hand lane to merge in, so you want to be covering that right hand mirror here and just covering your back for anyone who might chance it to get round you before them posts. As we're driving in a 50-mile-an-hour zone as well, we want to be seen to be making good progress along this road. Keep that speed up to a good progressive speed. We don't want to be dawdling at 30 mile an hour in a 50 zone. Equally, you don't want to be pushing 50 if we don't feel it's safe to do so. With the bend, the posts in the middle of the road, and a few cars not too far ahead, then the information about the traffic lights and the junction approaching, it's not worth progressing to 50, and my pupil holds 40 really nicely on there, so I'm happy with that. We're going to be taking a right turn at these traffic lights, so we should be checking our mirrors and signalling, moving into that right hand lane in good time, and then of course paying attention to those traffic lights ahead as well, so we can predict what the cars in front are going to be doing. In this case they are green, so you can see the traffic moving, so my pupil latches onto the back of the car in front and keeps the wheels turning through that junction. Absolutely spot on driving there. Again, 2 lanes, you can see those arrows there telling cars to merge into one, and the 30 mile an hour speed limit there, so just be mindful of those changes which can happen before or after junctions. If we miss those speed limits and we start creeping over thinking it's still a 50 zone, it's just not appropriate in this situation, and you're going to get a serious fault for speed. So very, very aware, very observant as you're coming in and out of junctions, because that's often where the speed changes. You can see my pupil here maintaining a really nice following space behind these cars as well as they queue up. She's not getting too close to them, but equally not sitting miles behind them, and that's absolutely spot on as well. We want to be seeing the bottom of the car where the tyres meet the road. Tarmac and tyres is a common phrase a lot of instructors will say, so keep that in mind when you're queuing up in traffic. I'm going to give my pupil a fault here for signal timing. So there's a retail park on the left. We're going left at the traffic lights, and unfortunately she's already put the signal on before we pass that entry to the retail park. Because there's nobody around who could be misled by that signal, I'm not going to put it as a serious fault. However, this could quickly escalate if someone wanted to come out of the retail park, saw the pupil signaling left and assumed that it was safe to go. That could escalate very quickly through a serious fault and into a dangerous fault for misleading people. Be very mindful of your signal timing and how other people view your signals as you come to these junctions. Up ahead, we're going to be taking a left turn. It's quite a tight junction, so just to keep it safe, we want to be reducing that speed, looking up into the turn, watching for bikes as well if you notice the bike lane on the left there, just being careful that we don't come flying into a tight space and not have any room to continue and have to stop quite sharply as a result. So any corners you come around, make sure you can see, you can slow down in good time, and that you can stop in the space that you can see. The same again here, you can see the pupil slow down and make sure she's forward enough to see into that road before committing to it. The parked cars either side there would give us a real problem. If there's an oncoming car, we'd just run out of room, so we've got to see what's in there before we commit to that turn. I'm going to get my pupil to pull over on the left here. She does a really nice job, picks a good spot and just keeps clear of the driveway. Absolutely perfect. And then we're going to move on, turning left at the end of the road. Again, we've got loads of parked cars around here, particularly the van and the taxi on the other side of the junction ahead. As we come out of this road, we've got to make sure that there's nothing passing by that's going to obstruct us, that we're not pulling out into the path of a vehicle from the left, for example. So the pupil makes some really good observations coming out of here, and I, again, cannot fault her for anything she does on that junction. Absolutely spot on approach, really good speed, really defensive, and really observant. Through gaps like this as well, we want to be checking those mirrors frequently, keeping an eye on the clearance on either side, keeping the car fairly central as we go down, and just being mindful of anything coming into the junction from the other end. Again, the pupil does a really nice job doing that. Her mirror use is absolutely spot on during that bit of road. And at the end, quite a poor view out of this junction, so you can see how slow we're going, allowing the pupil to make really good observations before pulling out into that new road. We've got another tight turn on the right up ahead, and again you can see the pupil slowing down and getting that view into the junction before sticking the car into it. She makes sure she can see through that gap before pulling into it. So if someone is coming the other way, that could quickly become a problem for us. Pulling up to our angle start here, because of the layout of the road, I've recorded a driver fault for the position normal stops. And you can see from the alignment with the car in front, we are sticking out a little bit into the road. This could cause an issue for a vehicle coming down the road, particularly if it's a big vehicle like a lorry or a bus or a bin truck. So I've got to mark a fault for that. We're also a little bit close to that blue car as we came out. Just be very, very mindful when you're going down tight spaces like this that you allow plenty of space, as much space as you safely can when you're passing by. And where the space is limited, we want to adapt our speed to allow for more thinking time. Up at the end of the road, another junction with a very poor view, so you can see the pupil slowing right down so she can see out of this junction before crossing the line and joining the new road. Any junctions where our view is restricted like that, we want to be very, very careful about pulling out. Sticking the nose out into that junction could be quite dangerous, so make sure you're up to the giveaway line and you can see effectively before you cross the lines. Mini roundabout ahead, we're going straight ahead. As with any mini roundabouts, we give way to traffic coming from the right. We can see the junctions clear quite early on here, so the pupil makes a really good job of just continuing through that junction. Really effective observations, but maintains the speed in response to the good view and that clear gap. Up ahead at the traffic lights, we're going to be taking a right turn. Now, because we don't get a filter light, my advice would be don't be more than the second car into that junction. Depending on the layout of the junction, it may even be worth hanging back and only letting one car go in at a time. And that'll prevent the next car from getting caught out as the lights change. Now, you might notice in this particular scenario, we have a set of lights on our side of the junction, but as we enter, we can't see any lights on the far side of the junction. So usually that would imply the oncoming traffic is controlled by a filter light. That means while we're sat in the middle of the junction waiting to cross that oncoming traffic, our lights actually change red. Because we're in the junction, it doesn't any longer apply to us. We've still got to give way to the oncoming cars who will be on a green light and a filter light. You can see my pupil creeping in with the car in front. I'd have appreciated if this Vauxhall moved up a little bit more, allowing my pupil to get further in, but they held back quite a lot on this one. And this can put us at risk if the lights change and they don't progress through the junction quickly enough. And that's why we want to be very careful not to just follow people into junctions. We do make it through quite safely on this one, and as you can see, the pupil makes really good progress. The oncoming cars have stopped, so the lights are changing, and she's clear of the junction and getting up to speed in a good, positive manner. So I have no reason to put any faults there. However, had the Vauxhall hesitated, or had my pupil not made good progress there, that could have very quickly escalated into a serious and dangerous fault because the traffic from the sides was starting to move. As we enter the national speed limit zone, it's worth noting that we have a central division here. We've got a physical separation between us and the oncoming vehicles, and that allows us to progress up to 70 miles an hour if it's safe. Now, the key words there, of course, are if it's safe, because if it's not safe to do 70, we definitely shouldn't be putting ourselves up to that speed. As we approach traffic lights, you can see they're on red. We definitely can't get up to 70 miles an hour before them. The pupil again does a really nice job keeping a good following space behind the Vauxhall in front. She's allowing a good view of the road between our car and theirs. So we've then got plenty of space if there's any mishaps, such as the car in front rolling back or stalling or breaking down, and us having to potentially make our way around them. Up ahead, we've got a direction sign telling us that Huthwaite is off to the right. So my pupil has rightly responded by moving into the right-hand lane there. That prepares us for the junction that's coming up, of course. We have got a junction before that taking a left towards Pinkston. And with us going right towards Huthwaite, what we want to be doing is positioning on the far right. You'll notice the signs on the left here telling us the right-hand lane is the only one for Huthwaite. The markings confirming that. Then as we get closer to the junction, this lane's going to split into two. Now the ideal if this happens is stick on the left-hand lane. Don't go in the right-hand lane unless you're overtaking or unless you know you'll be turning right shortly afterwards. So my pupil takes up a really good position here again. And once again, we pull up behind this car with plenty of space. We've got a good view of the road between us and their car, and that's absolutely spot on again. When we do make this turn, we've got to make sure we maintain our position as well. So as my pupil turns, what I should be seeing is her stick to the left-hand lane through the whole of the junction and finishing on the left-hand lane as we leave that junction too. As we do this, we want to be mindful of who's on the right as well, so good mirror use is what we should be looking for here. If those lanes merge, we want to be aware of cars trying to get past us and any adjustments we need to make to keep it safe. And as you'll see here, the markings very quickly join back into one lane. And it's very easy in that situation to miss the speed change from 70 down to 40. We've then got two mini roundabouts. So very mindful of that second one, because if we progress across the first one, it's very easy to overlook the second one. We've got to give way to the right if anyone's there, of course. It is nice and clear, and the pupil makes really good progress once again. So no reason to record any faults on that situation, absolutely spot on. Just up ahead we've got a pelican crossing, and for some reason a lot of my learners seem to slow down thinking this is a crossroad junction. It's not a crossroad junction. There is a junction on the left and the right immediately either side of the crossing, but it is just a crossing, so we can progress through that if there's nobody using it, if the lights aren't telling us to stop, of course. Notice as well we drop to a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and we want to make sure that speed again matches the environment. So the pupil here is sitting around 25, and that's absolutely spot on. Shortly ahead we're going to be turning right, and this is quite a tricky one to spot, so I've helped the pupil just by pointing out where it is. Just like with all the other tight junctions, we want to slow down, look up into that road, and make sure you can see a safe, clear path before you go. If you keep an eye on the black car coming the other way, you'll see them flash, and that allows my pupil an opportunity to pass. Now, of course, we shouldn't take that for granted, but looking at vehicle lights, just like the bus here, should help us make decisions about whether to go or not. My pupil momentarily was about to go round that bus before catching herself and spotting that indicator. So that's why I've recorded a driver fault there. It might not have been apparent on the camera, but in her mannerisms in the car, it was very apparent. So I've recorded a fault there for the response to the bus's indicator. Again, another very tight road, so lots of mirror use should be demonstrated down here. Just keeping a good eye on the clearance as you're passing by those cars, and if you can't allow loads of clearance, then reduce your speed to account for that. The road here, bend into the left. Notice the bus's left indicator this time, so that gives us a clear sign that that bus is pulled up, loading passengers, and gives us an opportunity to pass by, and my pupil takes advantage of that beautifully. Again, should be lots of mirror use, and the pace of the car should be adapted to the visibility and the space that we've got. And I think that was a really good example of how to pass a bus at a bus stop there. Be very mindful as you pass as well of pedestrians potentially stepping out in front of the bus, because sometimes they'll just get off the bus and walk straight across, assuming it's clear because the bus has stopped. And if we miss that, then we're probably not going to miss the pedestrian, and that's the worst case scenario. So very mindful of people doing that. Got my pupil to pull up on the left here again. A really nice stop. She's just shy of the driveway on the left there, so that's absolutely spot on. And the same with moving away. Really good observations, and not forgetting that blind spot check just before pulling away. The examiners are really hot on those blind spot checks, so just before you pull away, you want to lean forward and look over your shoulder, checking for anything on the right hand side of the car, driveways on the other side of the road, or cyclists who might be joining the road and could cause you a problem if you don't spot them. As we approach the end of the road, ready to turn right, notice the car park that's on the right just before the junction. Now, unfortunately, my pupil makes another mistake with the signal timing and puts the signal on before that car park, and this could mislead other drivers into thinking she's going into the car park rather than up to the end of the road. Again, because nobody's around, I'm not going to record that as anything more than a driver fault. Just be really mindful of the timing of your signals when you're approaching junctions. Look out for those side roads, make sure you're passing them before you signal so you don't mislead any other drivers. As we travel down roads like this where there's not really a lot going on, what we want to be seeing is lots and lots of eye movements and mirror checks from the driver. So my learner's doing a really good job of demonstrating that along this road, and as a result her speed, she's sitting consistently around 25 to 30 mile an hour, which is perfect for this road. We've got good visibility, but we've also got a lot of parked cars and a lot of side roads. So there's quite a lot of things to consider as we're moving along this road. There's an example in a few moments of a small car coming up to the end of the road quite quickly, and there's always the risk that car's going to just pull out without seeing us. If we're approaching any quicker, that could escalate into a serious fault or a near miss. You can see most people do hold back, so we can go with some confidence, of course. Just keep the speed a little bit lowered if you're not certain of what's going on ahead, if there's any potential risks up ahead. And the examiners are quite happy with that then, that you're still making progress, but you're demonstrating an awareness there of the potential risks. And the movements of the eyes as well, the mirror checks, that's going to reinforce that awareness, showing them that you're very engaged in the environment and you're looking out for these potential problems. And you notice here, as the situation got tighter, the pupils lowered her speed again to account for the lack of space. And this is a perfect example of how we should be handling roads like this, adapting our speed to the situation as we move along and keeping our eyes moving so we're fully updated as we do that as well. Regular mirror checks are going to keep you aware of what's coming up behind you and more prepared for the potential risks of them overtaking you or such. Notice the giveaway as we join this unusual roundabout. We're just continuing straight ahead. We've got a set of traffic lights coming up where we'll go straight as well. And as you'll see, this is pretty boring, which is absolutely spot on. The pupil doesn't do anything out of the ordinary. Her mirror use is good as well. Her speed's really smooth and controlled as she comes up to the junction. So again, there's nothing I can fault her for. It's a really good demonstration of how to handle these situations. Absolutely spot on. As we make our way across this junction as well, we're going to be very aware of the lane on the right of us, the red car there for example. As you'll see here, the lanes merge together pretty quickly. If we're prepared for that by keeping our eyes moving and covering their mirrors, then we're in a better position to deal with that safely. Whereas if we're looking for those markings and then reacting to them, we've got less thinking time to respond to the cars passing us, and that puts us at a higher risk. We've got a crossing and then a roundabout where we'll be taking a left turn first exit. And once again, there's not really a lot to say about this one. The pupil does a really good job of approaching the queue, keeping a little space between her and the car in front. Then she makes really good observations before joining the roundabout, and the line she takes off the roundabout is absolutely spot on as well. So a really good example, absolutely no faults to record. As we approach the next junction, which is a mini roundabout, you'll notice the two lanes as we approach. The left-hand lane is for straight ahead and the right-hand lane to turn right. Now, there's not a lot of room when we deal with these kind of roundabouts, this one in particular, so your positioning has to be absolutely spot on when you're coming through these ones. You see how narrow this is and then how the road curves in. Be very aware of who's on your right and make sure you're tucking yourself into that left-hand lane accurately. Not getting too focused on the traffic because you're going to lose your position then. So another really good demonstration from this pupil as she finds her gap, keeps tight to the line and keeps the car moving nice and swiftly through the junction. Just up ahead we've got a traffic light junction where we'll be turning right, and this one is quite an awkward angle to deal with. The angle itself isn't what causes the problem for my pupil here, however. So we're going to be taking a right turn. You can see the car in front who stopped in the junction. My pupil picks the position just before the yellow box. Now, This isn't ideal. We should be clear of the crossing as well and sitting behind that stop line. And in this particular situation, I would say no more than one car in the junction. When the lights change, you'll see the dynamic of the traffic change very quickly. With the lights changing and the car in front still not moved, we should have made the decision here to stop. However, the pupil goes to move forward. You can see the cars from the sides moving, so I've had to stop her from carrying on into that junction. It's got to go as dangerous fault, unfortunately. You can see here as well, even though the lights have changed back to our favour, we can't make progress into the junction until the other traffic has cleared. Remember, a green light means go if safe, and we don't want to be moving into that junction until the traffic from the sides has completely cleared it for us. As we wait here for the oncoming cars, it's just a case of keeping our mind on the road we want to take and looking forward for those gaps. There's a couple of moments where I thought maybe we could have went. You can see the pupil thought about it then and then decided to hang back. And I don't think that was an unreasonable decision given the situation we're in here. As a confident driver, maybe you could progress across those gaps, and that's absolutely fine if you can get on with it. As a new driver, maybe a bit more caution is the better solution. When those lights do change, this is our cue to make progress out of the junction as soon as we safely can. We don't want to be sat in that junction longer than necessary once those lights start changing. As we approach the end of the road, I'm going to record another signal timing fault, and it's exactly the same as the previous two situations. There's a road on the left and the signal's on before we pass that road. There's nobody in the area, so I'm only going to put a driver fault. However, that could escalate very quickly. On the left here at the end, notice the parked Audi. There's a Range Rover just behind that with its signal on, and they're waiting to overtake. And I think as my learner pulled out, I don't feel there was enough observation to the left, and we should have spotted that and let it pass before going. So I'm going to record a driver fault for that one there. I think it was a case of being too focused on the traffic from the right and not quite noticing that car was there. However, not enough of a risk to put a serious fault because the Range Rover was clearly aware of us as well and decided to hold back. Just up ahead, we're going to be taking a right turn, and as we get close to the junction, you'll notice the filter lane. There is a marking about halfway along it separating the oncoming filter from our filter lane. So notice the oncoming car there coming in, then you've got the two lines and we can move in. Again, my pupil makes a really good example there of how to use that junction correctly, and she looks up before turning into the new road, which is what we always want to be doing when we enter a new road. Look up before you commit so you can see if the path is clear, and if it's not clear, of course, you can make the decision to wait before you enter that new road. As we come down this road, there's been quite a few warnings about the crossing and the school area. Notice the person stood on the right waiting to cross the road. Now, even though they haven't stepped into the road, they show clear intention that they want to cross, so you must stop and let them cross. If you ignore that pedestrian and drive across that crossing, you will fail your test. So be very mindful of people near crossings and be prepared to slow down and give way to them, particularly if you're not sure whether they're intending to cross or not. If you're not sure, you should be more defensive and assume they are probably going to cross. Up ahead, we've got a traffic light junction, and I've asked my pupil to go past the junction and then turn right back into the test centre. I think there was a bit of confusion on that approach because my pupil put her signal on and then turns right at the lights. It's not a big issue if you go the wrong way at a junction, as long as you do it correctly. So the fact that she put a signal on and then turned right means that the junction has been done correctly. However, if she'd have put a signal on and then went straight across and turned right after the lights, that would result in a fault, potentially a serious fault if that misleading signal causes another vehicle a problem as you go across the junction. So I can't fault the pupil for doing this. It's a wrong turn. You won't get faulted for taking a wrong turn as long as it's done safely, like I said. As we make the turn as well, the pupil takes up a really nice position straight into that left-hand lane. Notice those arrows there as well, telling the right-hand lane to merge in anyway. So we want to be in that left position as our normal thing. But if you do end up in the right-hand lane, just responding to those markings and moving in as safely as you can, using the mirrors before you do and signaling if anyone's there, and then building your speed up nice and positively. Again, it's a 50-mile-an-hour road here, so we want to be building up that speed. As you can see, the pupil's only doing about 35 here, and that's absolutely fine because we've got the queue ahead, we've got the warning for the traffic lights, and we've got the direction sign as well, where we'll be turning left to loop around to the test centre. As we approach, you can see the lane markings here as well. We need to stick in the left-hand lane, and then as we get closer, you'll see the filter lane off to the left. At the end of that filter lane, there is a set of traffic lights as well. It does allow you to pull straight out without the risk of traffic coming from your right. However, there's no harm in doing a quick check before you fully commit to going out into that new road. There are some junctions where this filter lane won't have a set of lights and instead it will have a give way, and at those ones you particularly want to be attentive of cars coming from the right hand side. There's one of them we will tackle shortly ahead. I'll point it out to you so you can see what I'm on about there. Up ahead, you might be able to see now the railway crossing and the warning lights for that flashing. So as soon as you see these, of course, you want to be off the power, covering the brakes and ready to join the queue that's waiting to cross. Now these can take a few minutes as well. We were sat here for about 6 minutes, so I've skipped through that. There's no point in staring at the back of this car for 6 minutes. As the barriers lift, the lights go off, we're then free to go. Just make sure when you come up to that crossing you can get fully across it before you enter it. Don't enter it if there's a potential risk of you having to stop inside those barriers, inside those markings. Just after we've got the mini roundabout, and once again the pupil finds a gap and just throws herself through it really confidently. And this is a really good example again of dealing with those mini roundabouts. Remember, if ever you're not sure about the gap, treat it as a no and be more defensive. Don't rush through unless you're absolutely sure you can make your way across that junction. Up ahead, we've got a national speed limit sign, so where we're sharing the road with oncoming cars, it's a 60 limit, not 70. And then we've got a traffic light junction, but we're going to be going left into a filter lane which has a give way at the end. There's no traffic light control on the end of it. Notice the give way sign on the left hand side. With the lights changing to green, it does mean that the traffic from the right won't be coming across the junction, so we can make a more confident decision to go through that giveaway. However, you should still check and make sure you're safe. Don't just throw yourself through because the lights are green. Mini roundabout, and again, another example of the pupil just finding a gap and going through with absolute confidence. Can't fault her at all for that. Just up ahead, we're going to be taking a left back into the test centre, so I'm going to start wrapping up now. Thank you again for watching this video. I do hope that it has been useful for you in preparing for your own test. If you are finding them useful, please like, share and subscribe. It really does help with the channel growth, and of course then more people see it so they can benefit from these videos too. When we take a left into the test centre, it's just behind this blue sign on the left here. Quite a tight corner, so you can see the pupils slowing down really nicely, just pulling the nose of the car in really tightly. Unfortunately, I'm going to record another serious fault at the end of this, where the pupil is asked to do a reverse bay park in the parking area where you'll come for your test. Unfortunately, she doesn't quite do it, pulls out, tries to correct it, and ends up in a position with the back right wheel sticking out the corner of the space, so it's got to go down as a serious fault. For the bay park, all four wheels have to finish inside the space, and the examiners also want to see effective observations, looking over the shoulders frequently, especially when you're reversing. Again, I do hope you found this video useful. Thank you ever so much for watching, and God bless you.